Hello and welcome to the Brand Storytelling live streams for June 24th, 2020. I'm Drew Parkhill. Thanks for being with us. These live streams air every Wednesday, and our mission is to deliver the most timely and relevant information for our community of brands and their storytelling partners. These shows are designed for you, so please let us know how we can best serve the community by suggesting future topics and guests that would help you now as well as into the future. You can drop me a line. I'm Drew at BrandStorytelling.tv. Excited to introduce our host and welcome him back to the show, Dean Takahashi. He's the lead writer for GamesBeat and at VentureBeat, and he's been a tech journalist for more than 28 years, and he's covered games for the last 21 years. Dean, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. I am happy to be here today. As he mentioned, I'm the lead writer for GamesBeat at VentureBeat. I've been at the company for 12 years, and I write about the game industry every day, and I also organize the GamesBeat conferences. And I'm very happy to be here with our panelists today. We're going to be discussing, diving into gaming, really. The word gaming is this umbrella term describing what's become a vast ecosystem of community and opportunity, from streamers, lifestyle and culture, to esports and competition and tournaments, influencers. Today's global circumstances too have accelerated the growth of this industry and fueled the consumer adoption of gaming. So we're going to talk about that ecosystem today, but I also have to acknowledge that there's both promise and peril in gaming. In the past week, we've seen more than 200 people, mostly women, come forward with harrowing tales of sexual harassment and abuse in the industry. That's resulting in some much needed action in the ranks of the game industry and among streamers and in game journalism itself. There's no part of the industry that hasn't been touched so far. And I think this is an example of how it's important to be aware of what you're getting into with gaming. And with that, I'd like to introduce some of our panelists. Jennifer Weiner at Fullscreen. I think you'd like to say something about this as well. So welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dean. I think it's been startling, obviously, to see the allegations come out, but I do think that this has been a systemic problem in gaming for a long time, and one that has been a bit of an undercurrent that people have been aware of but didn't know how to handle. And so while it's disturbing and upsetting, especially as a female, I do feel a great sense of hope for the future just based on the culture that we're currently living through and the fact that consumers are now demanding brands to take action, developers to take action, companies across the board, talent. So I do feel far more hopeful for the future now than I have in the past, that real action will be taken to address these issues and also curtail them from happening in the future.
And it feels like this also is one more piece of this change that gaming is going through, from very narrow, sort of very hardcore roots to a mainstream and global industry. And with that, I'd like to welcome our other panelists on board. You can all join us now. We have Jerome Assetti. He's our gaming personality and entrepreneur. Goes by Jerome ASF. We have Chin Wu, who's a senior manager for US gaming and market lead for HP Omen. Welcome. And Ryan Thompson, account executive and E-League sales director at Turner Sports. So welcome, everybody. And just to sort of try to get everyone acclimated with where the gaming ecosystem is today, Jerome, do you want to tackle how people are making careers out of streaming and being influencers today?
Yeah, sure. So over the last few years, especially probably dating back to like 2013 and 14, we saw a huge rise in people being able to do online streaming as more than just a hobby, but also in terms of a career. And over time as well, what we saw was, I suppose, more opening of opportunities for smaller streamers to get the attention that they need. We saw an opening, kind of a floodgate, if you will, of people coming into the space where people were like, well, just because I can't necessarily make, $30 million like Ninja does, maybe along the way I could still make enough to warrant it being a part-time job. Maybe I can make enough to warrant it just being some extra cash to help me pay the bills at the end of the month. And that's what kind of helps people progressively move up and up and up through the ranks. I know even myself, when I first started, back in 2008, the idea of doing it as a career didn't exist. There weren't really any professional YouTubers. There was a handful of people who made money from it, but it wasn't a thing. But over time, it developed into probably around 2010, 11, something that I could look at as a part-time job. That, instead of going out and working at, after school, I wouldn't go home and, go out and work at like a local pizza place or whatever. I would just make some videos online, make some good content and stuff that I enjoyed. And I think now more than ever that has grown. And I think it's really nice to see. I think on top of that, now some streamers and gamers that are lucky enough have even been able to employ people to do different things, whether that be editing, graphic design work, etc. And it's been a really interesting space to see develop over the last few years.
And Chin and Ryan, I guess you guys are interacting a lot with these folks, right? Do you want to talk about some of that? Maybe Chin.
For sure, yes. I think for me, I work for a technology company and we make computers, and the community and people definitely care more about people. And so across the last few years, we've really looked at how we can partner with streamers, content creators that not only can demonstrate and showcase the usage of certain gaming products, but also tell stories and share what some of the same values that we believe in terms of the benefits of gaming. I think that what we've seen this year that's been really interesting is that we traditionally think that maybe there's certain kind of people that really want to get into streaming. What we've seen is that with the whole pandemic situation, we've seen, even mainstream celebrities, influencers also are seeing that streaming and playing games is another avenue for them to be in touch with their fans. And that's what we're really excited about.
And Ryan, did you want to weigh in a little bit on that one too?
Yeah, absolutely. Jerome kind of talked about a timeline, and within that timeline came eLeague, which is our gaming owned and operated platform, a part of Turner Sports, which is now AT&T and Warner Media. If you talked about us, 10 years ago, we were not within the gaming space. With it has come a ton of opportunities as we look kind of in the 2020 calendar and what's coming beyond. There's new launches, new games and IP coming out. So the opportunity really becomes endless. And drafting off of Turner Sports equity that we have in other sports like the NBA, the NCAA, we have been able to partner with a number of brands that were not endemic within the space, and where eLeague could be their first step into the gaming world. So it's been an exciting one for us.
Speaking of big news, we had another big sort of earthquake this week with Microsoft saying that they would shut down Mixer, their live streaming service, on July 22nd, and then move a lot of its base over to Facebook Gaming. I'm curious why, what your take is, Jerome. Why did Microsoft choose Facebook Gaming here? And what are you observing about what's happening?
So, I mean, this is all just opinionated, I suppose, as to why, but it's my belief that they would have chosen Mixer to acquire and push into Facebook gaming solely because Facebook gaming was, at the time, at least during the coronavirus, the fastest growing online platform. I remember reading back about a month ago, it's an article, I pulled it up here as well from Forbes from May 16th. So right around, the height of the coronavirus, what they found was that from April 2019 to April 2020, the companies had the highest year-over-year growth. You had Twitch, which had 100% or 98 to 101% growth. YouTube gaming had 65% growth. The average industry growth was 99%. Facebook gaming saw 238% growth. Mixer saw 0.2. So I think the pairing of the two was because Facebook gaming was by and large the fastest growing platform. So that's why I believe it to be so. I don't know for sure. I see some people also in there. Jerome, share that link of the article. Yeah, let me do that. I'm still kind of new to the whole Zoom thing. I think I did it. but yeah, it's super interesting. And that's in my opinion why they would want to partner with them.
Yeah, I think less than a year ago, Microsoft said that they had 30 million users on Mixer, and it's a little shocking that that's not enough these days. Right? That's not enough of a critical mass against way more than 100 million for something like Twitch, right? And Ryan, I wonder what your observations are here about this space as well, and what's happened now, I guess.
Sure. Maybe he wasn't perhaps as completely shocked by Mixer shutting down. And when I kind of look at it through a brand lens, I kind of think we talk about the Shrouds of the world. We talk about the Ninjas of the world almost before we even talk about Mixers. And so as a brand, the brands who are associated with, both of those two streamers, which are now, from what I can read in the headlines, are basically free agents to choose what platform they want to go to. Those brands almost don't skip a beat in terms of their work with such streamers. So that was kind of where I immediately went to, is siding with the brands that are a part of some of those streamers, and wherever Ninja Shroud seem to go. So like Red Bull, for instance, with Ninja, if he picks up camp and starts Twitch tomorrow, they almost don't skip a beat within the space.
Yeah, and I guess I've been following gaming for a long time. It is astounding that more than $100 billion is expected to be the revenues for mobile games alone in 2020, and that I think Newzoo estimates the overall market this year will be 160 billion. So these are huge numbers. I'm curious, from your point of view, participating in this industry, what are some of the numbers that really draw you into it, or that you use to make an impression on somebody who you think should care more about games? Anyone can jump in on this one if you wish. Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's really seeing, and we've done a lot of research, Fullscreen's done a lot of research in this space, but it's really seeing how mainstream and how pervasive gaming is and gaming affinity is with millennials and Gen Z. And I think that's the most sort of amazing number to me, is that 55% of Gen Z identify as gamers. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but to me, it really shows that gaming is synonymous with culture now. It is synonymous with this demographic. They love it. They are going to continue to spend more on it. And I also think, to what we were talking about earlier, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, just because gamers, much like parents and other demographics, they have multiple identities. They're not just gamers. They have other interests, and all of those things tied together. Many gamers love comedy and anime and sports and other things. So I think there's just a tremendous opportunity as it becomes more mainstream. Actually, I saw yesterday that the Lumineers are partnering with, and I sent this to Ryan, the Lumineers are partnering with Deadmau5 and PUBG to do a charity gaming tournament. And Chin can speak to this too, about what Omen is doing today. And I'm not going to take her thunder, but it's showing how gaming is part of music, part of fashion, part of culture. And I just think it's going to continue to grow. And I think the numbers are endless.
Yeah, Chin, would you like to say
Cool.
something?
Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. So from a business standpoint, Dean, you're absolutely right. Like, there's a lot of growth in gaming, and in the technology world, we definitely see that. If we look at the growth and the innovation, from the technology world, we definitely do see gaming growing tremendously year over year. So from a business standpoint, it makes sense for us to offer more for our customers. The democratization and the mainstream aspect of gaming is definitely helping as well. So we can create, different types of offerings to different types of customers. And to Jennifer's point, I think where the industry is heading also is just expanding, not just from the competitive side. The competitive side is growing bigger and bigger, but also I would say middle in the stack and lower in the stack, you can see that it's just casting a wider and wider net. And so, for example, today, this evening, Omen is partnering with Hypebeast to put together a live stream event. And, traditionally you wouldn't think such a, cool, hip, fashion forward brand that has such a cult in terms of sneaker culture, is partnering with a gaming brand. But the matter of fact is that when we look at the passion points of gamers, like what Jennifer was saying, gamers are not one-dimensional. They not only play games, right? They also have passion points in sports and in fashion and entertainment. And we're seeing that the democratization of gaming and gaming really helping to also transcend and push forward culture is what we're really excited about. So I think this is one of the biggest trends that we're seeing too.
And Ryan, also, do you want to weigh in some way? Like what sort of numbers are very interesting to you, or just trends in gaming?
Yeah, no, I think I think one thing that's really important, especially if we're looking at it through a brand lens, is, and I think you spoke to it, in terms of the intro today, is that gaming and esports are sometimes they're used synonymously, almost too close as meaning the same thing, and they really need to be looked at as independently, right? And then even when you break into the esports ecosystem, each individual game itself really needs to be considered its own esport, just like the NFL and the NBA and hockey, NHL are all separate sports within themselves. And with that, I think when you start actually looking through everything a little bit more micro as opposed to macro, because a lot of times the big headlines that we're reading are all huge macro grossed up numbers, which are impressive, right? But I think when you start looking at these micro audiences as well too, and these micro fandoms, you're able to kind of really decipher what makes sense in terms of a brand to take a step foot in. I think for us, we tiptoe the line at Turner Sports of traditional sports as well too as gaming and esports. Esports and gaming, obviously part of our E-League vertical, but what we've seen a lot of success in as well too over the last couple of years has been crossover events. And that's really stemmed off of fandom more publicly now of like an NBA athlete, let's say Darren Fox, who talks about openly how he travels with his PS4 on road games and is playing. And, that's something where Bleacher Report, which is also part of Warner Media News and Sports, is really leaning to from a cultural standpoint. So I think that that intersection of sports and culture is also a similar intersection for entertainment as well as for gaming as well too. And with that comes a lot of opportunity. And I think, we've been working more closely now in recent days with Fullscreen, who has an impressive Rolodex of talent, inclusive of Jerome as well too. So with it, there's just a number of ways for brands to activate, and based upon whatever numbers and audiences you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. And we have some questions coming in on the side here. I don't know if anybody wants to jump at one of those. Go ahead and look and see if you want to respond to anything that the audience is interested in here. I'll wait for a second there if anyone wants to jump. Jennifer, did you?
Well, I just wanted to add while we're looking at the questions, the other number that I think is sort of staggering is the fact that I know that 44% of millennials are say that they're gamers, but 46% of perennials, that's what we call parents that are millennials. So even a higher percentage. And that was something that was really staggering to me. The fact that so many millennials and parents are using gaming as the number one way to bond with their kids. So I just wanted to throw that out there as another number that I thought was really interesting, but I'll look at the questions now.
Okay. While you guys are thinking again, I throw a story that I wrote from yesterday into the chat here, where Deloitte did a survey of more than 2,000 people during the pandemic, sort of before and after, and they found that gaming is really competitive with streaming video watching, and you all know how we're binging during the pandemic on Netflix, right? And the average binge session, I guess, for watching video is like 4.2 hours now. But they also found that gaming is lasting 3.3 hours on average. And if you sort of take the average across everybody, streaming video is more popular. Right, but if you look at millennials and Gen Z consumers, it's flipped, and gaming is far more popular. And I think that's just very interesting evidence of how it's become more important and it's growing. So pause there for anybody else want to jump in on a question that you see there. I think Jerome, I think this sort of Twitch over other platforms might be a good one for you to tackle, I guess.
Yeah. So in terms of why they would choose Twitch over other platforms, obviously I can't speak on their behalf, but the two reasons that immediately come to my mind are that one, that's where Ninja and Shroud initially had built their audiences. So although they were bought out by other platforms, I think both were on Mixer at the time. That's not where most of their audience was. Most of their audience had gone there. And the idea, I mean, a lot of brands have tried and it really doesn't work out most of the time. The idea that you could just hop platform to platform to platform and have the same splash, it just doesn't work like that. It's akin to having someone who's a TV star jump into radio, or someone who does radio jump into YouTube. It doesn't always transition that way. And most of the time it's a lot more difficult than these platforms think. So the first one is that's where most of their audience is. The second is that is also where the largest audiences are. So not to keep bringing it back to the old article that I had posted over there as well, but in April, Twitch saw that it had 1.4 billion with a B hours watched across their entire platform. The nearest competitor that came through was YouTube Gaming at 461 million. So they literally outperformed YouTube by 1 billion hours watched. So if you're looking to grow your career in streaming, it's probably Twitch. It's just probably the best place to do it. Those are the two reasons that I could think of why they would choose it. I'm sure there was a lot of monetary compensation as well coming that way. But to that, I can't speak to like with 100%, knowledge.
Anybody else want to riff on something here? Otherwise,
I think
okay, go ahead,
a couple things come to mind for me. One would be speed continuity. I think continuity is important. When you look at just anything traditional sports as well too. We have the longest standing at Turner Sports League Network partnership with the NBA. Many think of the NBA as TNT. So I think that's important also in gaming. One piece, something that's important for E-League in terms of our set of schedule too, is to have mainstays as a part of our schedule, as opposed to just bouncing around and really not having an identity. And I think, looking at Twitch also too, as not just a video network, but really as a social network as well too, which I think is something that's important. And the connection that fans have, not only with the streamers themselves, but with each other as well too, in terms of that. And, we are in partnership with Twitch for this with Super Punch, which is a nightly show as well. But I think looking at Twitch as not only a platform, but also as a social network and interactive network, it makes things interesting too. And then also just being the 800-pound gorilla within the room in terms of scale.
And Jennifer, were you also jumping in there for something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think also what's been really interesting during COVID is seeing how Twitch has evolved. And yes, it's grown tremendously. And we've talked about how gaming in general has just grown in an exponential fashion over the last few months during COVID. But what's interesting too is how Twitch is really evolving and drawing more people in and more streaming in that's not necessarily just around gaming. And going back to that point that gamers have other passion points, but Twitch in general has done a really good job of now giving other formats and other genres room to grow as well. And furthermore, I do think that each one of the platforms has benefits. Ninja has a tremendous presence on Twitch, but he's also on YouTube gaming. And I think that creators are really smart, Jerome included, in how they leverage the different platforms to talk to their audiences in different ways and grow them in different ways. I also thought was super interesting. I think Discord signups have grown by 200% over the last few months. And so just looking at gaming and how gamers communicate across social has also been really interesting. But I think each one of the platforms brings different value. I don't know, Jerome, if you focus on anything beyond YouTube, but I know that many creators do, and the audiences are different and how you want to communicate with them is different.
Yeah, every platform has its own real way of communicating with viewers. It's entirely different. The cultures there are entirely different. I'd go so far as to say each and every platform has truly its own culture. It is the best way to put it. The way that YouTubers interact with their fan base versus Twitch, viewers, it's not nearly the same. And as a small, for instance, when you stream on YouTube, you are less likely to get subscribers and members over there. They've always struggled with it, and it makes no sense at all. The membership program that they offer there, which is almost akin to the subscription service that is on Twitch, they're pretty much identical. The only difference is that for whatever reason on YouTube, it just doesn't happen. On Twitch, you might have thousands, some of the top streamers, that is, might have thousands and thousands of people who are paying subscribers. On YouTube, though, for whatever reason, that culture doesn't exist there. And like I said, it's not like the perks are different. There just truly isn't much difference at all. It's just this mindset difference. Not to say that all these things are negative, one way or the other, but that's just one example of how the cultures are different across the different platforms.
And I'd like to talk about, say, authenticity and how brands need to embrace it in order to jump into this gaming market. The example I like to bring up here is about Saturday Night Live. They did a skit about Call of Duty Warzone, which went from 0 to 60 million users in the pandemic here, and they had a streamer sort of pretend he was playing and jumped into the maps and immediately got killed, and that was the whole humor of it. But to me, it wasn't authentic because they used the wrong map in the game, right? And in the show, they were showing a map from Modern Warfare and not from Warzone, and that's kind of something that any player of the game would have noticed. So you have to be authentic when you jump in here. Do you guys have more thoughts about that? And let's see, let's start with Ryan.
Sure. I think, authenticity is a word that gets thrown around a lot and perhaps overused, but I think it's critical and really needs to be the very start. And I think, in our years of working within the space and working with brands, the one thing that we ask of brands is to use us, eLeague, as a guide to help find your voice, to be authentic. And with that, it was, I think also finding our own voice, knowing that us traditional stick and ball sport publisher with Turner Sports, when we started eLeague at its advent, we went out and found some of the best talent within the marketplace, former gamers, former producers at Riot as well too. So we knew what we also did not know. And I think that that's really something that brands need to be open with, is understanding that you perhaps don't know the space at all, and to lean on publisher partners, Fullscreen, Jerome, HP Omen, who are working in the space to help find that voice. Because I can guarantee if SNL was asking eLeague to do a quick one-over of the skit, we probably would have been able to point out the snafu of the map. So, I think I've seen a number of brands really tiptoe around trying to come up with some sort of a gaming strategy over the last 4 or 5 years. And with the evolution of gaming, every single year changes. So, every year you're planning, you're almost becoming another year behind that you haven't done something. So we talked about continuity as well too. Have a plan, find a partner, and then stick to it. Don't just test once and then pull out. You actually have to really make a mark there.
And Chin, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree to what Jerome is saying, is that it's so important to find a partner to authentically tell a story. But when you're thinking about storytelling or putting out content, you think about your audience. And for us, the audience is the customer. And when we think about the customer, when you understand this gaming audience, it's not one type of gamer. It's not just 3 type of gamers. And we know there's a lot of research that shows that actually, if we want to segment them, we could segment them to 8 or 10 different types of segments. So I think in terms of authenticity, what it means for an advertiser or a manufacturing brand, we're really looking at how do we align our marketing objectives and our customer audience to our business objectives. So if we're making a certain type of product or service or device, who exactly are we making it for? Again, because there's different types of customers. And if you fully understand that customer, then having those nuances is going to help you be a lot more authentic when you're talking to them.
Yeah,
I think especially. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think in terms of authenticity as well, it's important to pair a brand with a, YouTuber or a streamer that's actually going to latch onto the product and enjoy the product. And I find that companies that use kind of a scattershot strategy and just go for one-off brand deals with a bunch of people tend not to be as successful, and even joked about Raid Shadow Legends, across the entire community, as opposed to if they had just picked 1, 2, 3 partners that they truly wanted to get behind and they wanted those people to get behind the brand. I think they'd have a much better result. And I tell brands this all the time, where I'm like, I've outright told brands before, look, I'm more than happy to work with you. I'm more than happy to do the brand deal. Obviously if that's, the lifeblood of the business, right? But at the same time, I go, if you're only going to buy one video, I highly doubt you're going to see the results you want. And I don't want you being upset with that. I'm like, that's just the harsh reality. Most of the times it needs to be some kind of a plan, whether it be across all the social platforms. And on top of that, it also needs to be done, in my opinion, in a way that would be like, how about instead of mentioning it in one video, why not having 2 videos that I mention an upcoming video where it's going to be the main feature of it? And that's the whole point of it, is that particular game or brand being promoted. Things like that, it come across a lot more authentic than if I just one-off say, hey, this product's pretty cool, trust me. Like that doesn't sell.
And just sort of laddering on, I think the brands have to understand that there's different ways to enter the gaming ecosystem. I think, as Ryan mentioned, for a long time, brands thought that it was only esports and competition, but there are all different types of ways to talk to gamers. It is esports and competition, but it's also through lifestyle and, other passion points like comedy and anime, or culture with creators like Jerome, and athletes, and then community. Creators have built tremendous communities. And so I think there's different ways for brands to enter the gaming ecosystem. They can do all of those things. They can do one of them. But I think it comes down to who their consumer is and who their audience is, and how they give value to that consumer. And there are all different types of gamers. To Chin's point, there's 8 different segments, but it really comes down to, are you more of a casual gamer? Are you a hardcore gamer? Are you a mainstream gamer? There's all these different ways that we define them, and what are their needs? We were talking to a brand recently that is a retailer who just really wanted to go after hardcore gamers, and they just weren't going to win in that way. They're a broader retailer that needed to be more focused on the casual and less hardcore gamer that really wanted to be educated in the space, needed assistance, was dabbling, and needed more equipment, as opposed to really hardcore gamers, which is where they wanted to start, where those people are really focused on a different approach to buying equipment. They're more focused on deals and quick things and making their own rigs. So I think it's also about, where can you provide value to the gaming community?
Yeah, I was going to ask more about how non-endemic brands, who are sort of the fish out of water here, how they can get comfortable with diving in as well. More thoughts on that, say Ryan? Or
Yeah, I mean, I actually, as Jenny and Jerome and we're all talking, I was kind of thinking of one of our executions that we did with the United States Air Force and Cloud9 around the Counter-Strike global offensive content. So, Air Force, which is not a typical endemic partner, not a peripheral, not a PC itself. and came to us as as a solution for them in terms of how do we brand storytell? How do we tell more stories in an authentic manner, right? And almost gamify it in a sort of way. So what we did is we took Cloud9 players who are best in class, obviously, world champions in their own right, and we brought them to Air Force bases, and they partnered with airmen and utilized a lot of the same tactics that they would within the game, within the live setting. And we saw these airmen were very well received at Cloud9 in terms of what their capabilities were. And Cloud9 players were superstars in their own right in terms of coming to the base. And so what we did was a multi-part series that lived across multiple platforms, lived on social, lived within our live tournament events, also lived within our TV episodes. And so I think with that kind of the same vein is we helped an advertiser and a partner with ours, a great partner, come in, find their voice and find out what the audience wanted and needed, which is more deep rooted content, and helped create a platform for them. That was not a one-off, like to Jerome's point as well too, but actually, aired as a series across multiple platforms, and was award worthy.
Yeah. And I think for some of the non-endemic brands, it's about finding that natural hook that is aligned to your brand and gaming, where that middle section is. So we work with GNC, for example, which obviously is a fitness lifestyle brand, and they provide gamers also have a passion for fitness and outdoor enthusiasts. So it's about partnering with gamers to really show that marriage of how GNC is able to support them in their gaming and their other passion points. And I think another one is we're working with a lot of Gen Z fashion brands. And I think it's about how you look at how gaming and gamers also have an affinity for beauty and fashion, and then what that looks like. Is it a game that inspires a fashion line? I think what's been really cool to see with Animal Crossing is that Valentino is now involved in that and has partnered with them, and how fashion has really translated. So I think it's really for those non-endemic brands. It's about finding the aligned passions and how those come to life.
One thing I've noticed more recently are companies that are sort of coming up with clever plans that involve overturning the stereotypes of gamers. And the example I read about recently was a company called Control, CTRL, and they're making protein shakes and other nutritious food for gamers. And you think about that and you go, that doesn't make sense, right? Don't these people want to eat snacks and Red Bull? That's the old stereotype of gamers. And if everybody's playing games, like 80% of the millennials are playing games, then they're a reflection of the general society in a lot of ways. And so these are opportunities then, I think, for people to take advantage of what the reality is, which is there are probably a lot of gamers who care about their weight, and protein shakes are actually a good thing to pitch to them, right? Well, that company teamed up with FaZe Clan, one of the big esports organizations, and makes perfect sense to me. There was also a service that opened up that was a dating service for gamers, and again, it's turning another stereotype on its head, like gamers can't get dates, right? So I don't know if you guys have some observations about this kind of opportunity.
I was going to say that, the idea of this gamer stereotype has kind of, at least in recent years, gone out the window. I always like to bring things back to a personal anecdote, because I'm sure we all have someone in our lives that this could apply to. But I was talking with my mom about this about a couple months back, where what I told her was, I was trying to convince her, more people than you think game. I'm like, a vast majority of the population game. She's like, no, there's no way majority. I was like, you game? And she's like, no, I don't. I was like, you play Word with Friends every day. You play Bejeweled as well. I think it's called Bejeweled. What's it called? The you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, exactly. Then I'm like, you also play Candy Crush. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, so you're a gamer, Mom? She's like, no. And I'm like, yes, you are. Like, you are. But she's stuck in her head this stereotype of, well, me rushing home from school, playing till 3 a.m. back in high school, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think that stereotype is long gone now. I think there's a lot of people out there that are just your average. Like, it's not a culture. It's not that's not a culture then, but it's not like a stereotype, if you will. I don't know how else to phrase it.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so HP, we actually recently did a study with Edelman Intelligence, Edelman, the PR firm, and we wanted to understand, what gamers' perception are about gaming and what non-gamers' perception is about gaming. And what we've seen is that, generally the people in general in the US, they do see that, yeah, like when you play games, there are certain benefits that you gain when you don't play games. There's hand-eye coordination, there's responsiveness, but despite the general population agreeing that there's some positivity around gaming, people still think that there are still unfair assumptions about gamers. Now, I think that we've come a long way in the past few years with a lot of gaming really entering pop culture and mainstream culture, and we see different faces of gamers. But I think that there still is that barrier to come out and say that gamers. There's still a large percent of gamers that they know gaming is good for them. They know it can help them relax, but they can't really tout it as much because they are still the fear of judgment of their family, for example. So,
okay.
Yeah, so sorry, just to kind of wrap up that thought is that, so, I think that people that are in the industry and all of us, I think that we all have this passion to really champion gaming in a really positive light, and show how gamers are, much more capable and than what society gives them credit for. And so part of our brand's mission is also just continue to talk about all the benefits of gaming in a really positive light.
Yeah, I see Stacy has a question in the chat here, like how do we change that rhetoric about quote unquote gamers that don't identify themselves as such? I don't know, Jennifer, take
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes back to seeing it more in mainstream culture, more of Omen partnering with Hypebeast and doing more of seeing people that you wouldn't think of as gamers identifying as gamers, NBA athletes, all types. And I think that eventually gets rid of the stigma. And I think having conversations like this where we talk about how there are different, I think the problem is with anything is when you make it synonymous with one thing. And a gamer is not just one thing. It is many different things. And I think as we talk more about that and that becomes more pervasive in culture, it's just going to continue to open up. And then seeing more of these partnerships, seeing more of the Lumineers partnering with PUBG and all of these cultural intersections. It's just going to be, it's taking a minute, but it's accelerating.
And I think we'd all agree that the pandemic is absolutely a terrible thing, but gaming has grown through it. And I'm curious what you guys think about how behavior might be changing now for consumers, and whether these advantages that have accrued to gaming, whether they're going to last or not. It's a bit of a crystal ball here. We might have to wrap up with this question. Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So in the same vein, Dean, we also did the survey. We also learned that that people who jumped into playing games during the pandemic, we found that they're more resilient and they can cope better with stress because they use this as a stress reliever and a mind away from the chaoticness of the world that is uncertain and you really can't control. So I think that during this pandemic, I think that people who have leaned into playing games can help them realize that this is something that helps them cope with anxiety and social connection. And when things are more back to normal and people can resume back to what a normal life is, I think people will always think back to gaming as an activity that helped them through this really difficult time, and they can always fall back onto it when they're having other difficult times in their life, as either you play for escape or you're just playing to be connected with other people.
And one more closing thought from anyone. Jennifer?
I mean, I would just say that it's hard to change behaviors once they've started. And I think what we've seen is a tremendous growth in gaming. And I think those behaviors are now probably here to stay. I think, you know, people will have more demands on their time, but then they're going to make prioritization choices on that time. And based on seeing how many Gen Z identify as gamers, I think it's just going to be continuing to grow, but it won't grow as quickly as it's growing, you know, once people are back to some normalcy, but we don't know when that will be. And I think that behaviors are going to be sort of locked in by that point. People have discovered a love for gaming.
Very good. Thank you very much to our panel. Great job. And I'll toss it back to Andrew here.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it. If you're just joining us or you missed a part of the stream and had to dip out and you're back, we will be publishing this on YouTube as of tomorrow. So go to BrandStorytelling.tv/streams to stay up to date and see what we're doing every Wednesday. Thanks so much to the entire panel. Thank you, Jenny and Ryan and Jerome and Chin. And thank you, Dean, for hosting again. And Dean, I'll see you soon for our next show.
All right.
See you. Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dean, and thanks to my panelists, Jake, Kiko, Jennifer, Tak. I really appreciate it. We'll have this recording published tomorrow on YouTube. So if you're just joining us or you missed a part of this stream, feel free to check it out there. Thanks so much, all. Talk to you soon.
All right.